Hey everyone, GMM here. Welcome to, this is a little bit of a weird video. So today, like an hour ago I think at this point, yeah, about an hour ago, I finished participating in this thing, which is DevWars. It's a bit hard to describe, but it's basically developers, front-end developers go head-to-head, and try to meet goals, and then there's a vote on who wins in the end. It's really cool. I recommend you check it out. It happens every other Saturday. I'll link everything down in the description if I eventually post this. But today we're going to be reviewing. So I participated in 2 games today. Both of the games. There's 2 games every week, or every other week. You get what I'm saying. I participated in both of them. We're not going to look at the first one because the first one I did really badly. And there's a couple of reasons for that, but we won't get into that right now. We're going to review the second one, and I'm not going to spoil the ending for you. I'm just going to talk through roughly what I was thinking. So we're going to go ahead and play the video. We're also going to lower that sound a little bit. So just a little bit of a lead up to this. You can see the goals on the side there, right above my head.
3, 2, 1.
So we start the game. Timer updates to half an hour. I am going to turn that down just a little bit more for myself, so that so I can actually hear myself. So the first thing we have to do is create a 3x3 grid of presents, which straightforward enough, right? You can see I'm on the bottom there, GMS. So my first thought was stick everything into a grid, and then just get the 9 elements, because I don't want to generate them on the fly. I could, but I don't really want to. So I just copy and pasted the boxes. Here, you can see I accidentally did background color. It's still early for me after the warm-up round. But here I'm just setting the background color to white, because by default in the editor, and maybe I'll post like a screenshot of what it looks like, but basically you've got 3 boxes, and then a 4th one, which is the preview. But the preview's background is always the color of the editor because of the way that they have it set up. So you have to set it to white so that you can actually see what you're doing. In the view that everyone else sees, the background is white, but we have to set it manually or else we can't see it. So here we can see I'm going through and I'm changing everything to IDs instead of classes I think I had before. Changing everything to IDs so I can identify them, obviously. I put a border on the grid just so that I can see exactly where it is, because there's no content in it yet, and it helps sizing and stuff. You can see dolidius is using he's using a display grid. Obviously he's a lot more familiar with CSS than I am, and you'll see he's slightly more familiar with JavaScript too. I'm mostly a backend guy, so I don't super work with CSS and JavaScript as much as I used to, so my skills have kind of waned. This is a nice way to exercise it. So you can see he's setting up his presents. I'm currently setting up my boxes as well, just using some really basic values just so I can see where everything is. So we're just going through, we're just getting everything set up just so that we can see what we're working with. And then I'm not entirely sure when the CSS or when the JavaScript starts. I need to turn that down a little bit more so that I can actually... It's mostly so that I can listen to myself talk. Otherwise I just start watching it. Yeah, you can see he's much more familiar with the grids. He's setting up the columns and the rows. I'm currently struggling with how to set up that grid because, again, it's been a while since I've used CSS. So I'm just going through and I'm trying to figure it out. I did have Google up on my other screen, just frantically Googling, like if I needed to figure something out, I would frantically Google it, which is why I paused so much. Here's a little preview of what I currently have. Unfortunately, there's no preview in the editor, so you can't see it as I go. But yeah, so about this, I was kind of hoping that they would automatically space out. Obviously, they didn't. So I have to go in and manually create a grid. And I don't know when I do this, but I do eventually switch it to a
display grid.
I do eventually display it as a grid. I think he switches back in a minute.
Grid on the red team too? Interesting.
But I wasn't super familiar with how it worked, so it took me a little bit to actually get it working.
Oh my god.
They've already got a grid up. They've already got presence. I think their design ended up looking a lot nicer than mine, but we'll see that in a little bit.
About the most properties we've seen in a while.
And I'm not going to go over the voting phase. I'm going to skip over that and just talk about my thoughts at the end.
Ooh, that's the real question.
So we'll see if he switches back in a second.
Looks like we have a head start on blue team's JavaScript right now. Handling that random logic for each of the
Does he want to switch back?
Wait a minute.
I don't know. But I think around this time I was working on randomizing which grid or which cube had the gift under it. So you can see on the side there, I've got the 3x3 grid. I think I've got the 3x3 grid at this point.
A little different than I imagined, but that,
If he wants to switch back, this is obviously, I should have recorded my point of view here.
More than welcome, because we'll have much more variety.
But I think I managed to get, this is a little spoiler, I managed to get all of these objectives checked. Let me skip ahead a little bit just to see the code. There we go. I'll pause it real quick just so that we can catch up. So my opponent's already got random colors set up, RGB, which in hindsight is what I should have done. Instead, I ended up hard coding the values that are generated. I apologize if my volume's all over the place. I'm trying my best to keep it all equal. But yeah, he uses RGB8, which in hindsight would have been a much better idea. Obviously, I didn't do that because reasons. You can see I do have the grid set up now. So display grid, grid template columns, auto, just spacing everything out nicely. I believe it just spaces it to whatever it has available, which is 160 pixels. And then I'm starting to work on getting the event listeners onto the boxes. I end up changing this to on-clicks because I think it wasn't working for me or something. So I just ended up changing it to on-clicks, which worked. A little bit messier markup, but honestly, I don't mind that as long as it works. They're not marking us on how clean our code is. So you can see I'm trying to add the event listener there for a turnover function, which I will get to in a second. I'm naming it turnover because I originally envisioned like these are cards that you're turning over. Really, you're just revealing it, so I could have named it whatever the heck I wanted, but I ended up going with turnover. And I believe, I don't know which side is me. I think I just requested the 3x3 grid of presence goal at the top there.
Alright, betting is now open for 3 minutes.
So the way the objectives work is each one is worth 1 point, and then the bonus one is worth 2. And then it goes to voting after that. No, that was blue that requested it, but I requested it shortly after. Basically, whenever I saw the score update, I would go and request it.
Technically, but they didn't request it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm usually really bad at requesting the objectives because I'm not paying attention.
Based off of objective completeness.
And I did have the stream on the other screen, but I also had Google up, so I wasn't really paying attention to the stream. It was also muted because I had music going on just to focus. So you can see a little bit of a mess up from me. I wish it didn't grayed out, but you can see var lucky box, so that's the one that we want, or that's the one that's going to have the prize under it. Math.floor, so it rounds it down, I think. And then math.random. Now math.random is a function, so I should have done math.random parentheses. I do that later, but this really confused me when I stick in a, you can see the debug there, and that'll be working, but basically it was showing NaN, and I was like, why is it, why? So, and I end up keeping the name Lucky Box because it just worked, and I didn't feel like refactoring it at all. You've only got like 25 minutes. It used to be, I think it used to be 20 or 15, but they gave us extra time this round because time crunch is real. So
Does this need to be 9 I'm not sure. I'm learning JavaScript myself.
And that doesn't... Oh, does it have to be 9? No, that doesn't have to be 9. Because then it would only generate up to 8, I think. I can't remember exactly how that works, but it never generated 10. Or at least, not that I saw, in the debug while I was using it, so... And I think I realized why this wasn't working. It's because I had eyes larger than 9, which... How did I miss that? But whatever, I did change it over eventually to on-click, so... Yeah, and then I'm adding a class just for myself. Well, mostly for myself for now.
45 seconds left to bet if you're gonna bet.
But that the one element was mostly to display when you've actually won. You can see I'm adding show, which is just display block instead of display hidden, which is what the hidden class is, and it overrides it. So I'm not super worried about that. It's working properly. You can see the add event listener. I'm moving it into the function itself, thinking that I could get it to work. Couldn't. So I end up, I don't know exactly when I end up changing it over to an on-click, but I do end up doing that just because this was frustrating me, and I know that the on-click works. Let's see. Let's look at the blue team. So it looks like create selector all. So yeah, he's getting all the presents, and then for each present, I don't know exactly what he's doing, but we'll unmute it.
So that we could get the randomness this game requires.
Yeah, he is doing ×9, which I believe means that the 8th one is never going to be it, but I need to play around with that a little bit more. Oh, he changed it to 10. Okay,
Oh, is
never
it
mind.
9? Okay. I thought it was.
I don't know. I kept it at 10 and it seemed to work, so I don't really know. I'm assuming because we're using math.floor, it might ran down to 0.
We don't have that math. Oh, we do have it up here. We
So-
have 10 here. So one of them is right. I just don't know which one.
Yeah, I need to play around with that a little bit more because I don't actually remember. I would pull up the dev console right now, but I don't really feel like it, so... Also, I keep looking over there because that's where my monitor is, and that's like where I can see the recording, and I keep getting distracted by myself and the corner of my eye. So that's why I keep looking over there. Also, I really should have grabbed some water, shouldn't I?
Instead of 0.
Whoops. A little bit more tea. Where are we?
Flip 1.
Yeah, so this is where I start transitioning over to the flip or the on-click, because it was just much easier than trying to wrestle with the add event listener.
Right inside of it. Okay, so
I accidentally copied.
randomize
Yeah.
this.
But you'll see I'm just copying the flip, and then I'm changing the ID to match the box ID, which isn't... I mean, it's not the best solution. I would have loved to have the for loop do this and add the event listeners, but this ended up working fine.
So we're adding the value here.
Yeah, and I got rid of that for that entire for loop, and I'm plugging it directly into the flip because that's much easier. Here you can see he's using arrow functions and being all fancy. Again, been a while since I've used JavaScript, but he's adding the event listener properly, which I've got a lot to learn, but yeah, and here you can see I've added on the parentheses, so this is actually working now.
Currently working on the diamond index.
Yeah, and they're working on diamond. I can't remember.
So we need a value between 1 through 9, right?
Yeah.
Or 0 through 9.
I think math time or math floor or math random times 9 will give you 0 to 9 or 0 to 8. I keep saying that because that's just what I think. So you can see I'm implementing logic. So if ID is the lucky box, if the ID of this is the lucky box, then
Looks like they're both kind of
it'll remove the hidden class. I ended up not having to use the show class, I just ended up getting rid of the hidden. In hindsight, I didn't really need the show class.
The number 4, I think he's using that to debug. Okay.
Yeah.
What about the blue team? Do we have any variations here?
Actually,
I think blue team right now is working on
that had never occurred to me. So there's a couple instances in which this doesn't actually work. Maybe we'll catch up on that in a second. Here you can see I'm adding styles to change over the background image. I'd already, before we'd started, I already Googled some images to plop in here.
so far.
So you see, I'll copy and paste that in a second.
We can get something working.
Once I find one, I think I'm just looking for one that works. Here you can see he's
We're doing
adding spans for GIFs.
that makes sense.
So there's a GIF within. You'll see how he uses this later. Yeah, I just posted in the diamond. It was just a random diamond PNG. I ended up replacing that one because we need an HTTPS one for it to work. It's kind of weird because the page that you go to view the site isn't HTTP, or maybe they fixed it by now. But the editor is an HTTPS, so you need an HTTPS one. So you can see he's getting the game, which is the grid, and then he's getting all the GIFs. I've never seen query selector before. That's interesting. I should remember that. Is that sort of like jQuery? It feels like that's sort of like jQuery. The $sign selector.
We got a diamond ring image.
He's using text to indicate it. I'm using images. My first thought was images, just because that's much easier to represent.
I guess we're gonna need another one that's not the one.
So then
Well, no, actually,
I'm just
let's
adding
assume that it's
default background as well. Or no, I'm sizing it properly so that
let's see.
it looks nice. Yeah, you can see this demonstrated here. It corresponds to the number.
I think it works. He just needs to add the logic for like clicking one that.
Yeah. So it's working at this point. I just need to add everything else in.
Yeah, look at that. So 4, so you know the diamond's gonna be here.
Yeah.
Is it just going? Oh, yeah.
And I think you can get 0 and it will go to the top one, but I
small code for
can't remember.
to get that to work. That's actually really cool.
Yeah. Most of the
But, I mean, we
like
are missing the other part of it.
most of the code that I have, or the code, let me just, I don't know if you heard that, but he said that's not a lot of code. That's because I'm not doing random colors yet. I'm not doing I'm not adding the event listeners, and I'm not generating the random color, and I've got a slightly different markup, which means I don't need to select as much stuff. So I save in the JavaScript department. I sacrifice in the markup department. But I think that's fine. I don't really know. I feel like I made a good decision when it came to what I want to sacrifice and what I want to keep.
So we see that we have the coal.
So this is obviously just debugging.
Where it's not the diamond.
Now I'd actually be curious. I'm going to go and look at the code later
So now
and figure out how the generation works.
So there we go. We're hiding the gift, and now that he knows that it works, we can
That's an
start
interesting. Why is he doing a set timeout? Get rid of it. I'm assuming that might have been a mistake, but I'm not sure yet.
Well, I think you're right. It starts at 0, and we definitely are going. We're doing a 10.
Yeah, so there, I just copy and pasted that over, or the image over. Copy and pasted the image over, and I'm going to replace that with the coal as well. I do need to remember how math.random works. So add event listener, click, GIFs index style, display, yeah. That's, yeah. Yeah, I do want to go back and look at the flip. Here you can see I've added a default background image, so we've got GIFs instead of just blank squares.
Oh, dang it, I just had it. Oh, I just had it again. I need it.
Here he's trying to break my app, which, fair enough, I want to go and do this too.
Come on, zero. Lucky zero. Zero. There we go.
Yeah, so zero is going to break it.
So all of them are
I thought so. I don't know why I didn't think of that at the time. I could have had a default to like 1 or something. And here I'm requesting coal or diamond objectives as well.
When a user clicks a present, it opens it revealing either coal or diamond.
Of course, he's got 0 again, so that's not going to work.
Yep.
But yeah, I also got rid of the debug message, which in hindsight I should have kept until the end.
One present
But
clicks a diamond revealing diamond wins the game.
so yeah, that is what's happening.
Okay, so both of them are complete. 3 points on the red team.
So yeah, it's 1 to 3, but I think he's
I can't wait to see this.
he's almost got this working. Although,
Or maybe it does
yeah,
work.
that one.
Let's see.
I think he's queuing everything up. I kind of jumped onto it immediately because you need to get those objectives in.
Okay, so we're
Otherwise, they might not be checked off. Usually they're pretty lenient about fixing stuff, but it's always safer.
that did work before.
So here you can see I'm setting up a randomization
So we're seeing Oh, an alert. I think an alert is okay.
for the background color.
So I think if blue team has the time.
I think I ended up removing that
HTML and CSS
because
style
it wasn't quite what I wanted. I wish that there was a function to just get a random color, but there isn't, which is what I intended to put in there, but it ended up that I had to do something else. So here you can see he's, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I see. So let's pause this again. So he's getting the diamond index, which is pretty much what I'm doing. And then he sets the gift inner HTML, and then he just compares it against the inner HTML. He's not comparing it against the index and the number itself. He's just comparing whether or not that has diamonds. So, interesting. That's an interesting way to do it. As you can see, I'm doing it directly with the ID, which makes more sense to me.
Right, but I'm not going to count it against them there. I am going to point that out in the UX phase, though, if that happens, for sure, because we vote on UX.
So yeah, you can see this is his working example. It's revealing coal. Yeah, and then it says you won. He used an alert, which makes sense, I guess. It's a good way to alert the user, obviously. We are tied. You'll see where that goes later.
This game is hype. How many of you are coding along in your own browser, your code pen? If you are, let me know in the chat right now, and also please share that on DevWars Discord.
Yeah, you can see he's also setting each of the coal blocks in HTML, or he's setting everything to coal first, and then he's setting it to diamond, which is interesting. So technically, when playing it, everything is already defined. It's just hidden. It's an interesting way of doing it. I wouldn't have thought to generate it before. Well, technically, I do generate it before, but I don't just like actually stick it into the HTML. It's all behind the scenes. So yeah, I don't remember exactly. I'm Googling for something. I think I was trying to figure out how to generate random colors, which is why I haven't really done much. But here I end up switching to color. I'm just switching to using color and then just using some logic to determine what color we should do. So I limit it to 3 colors because that's the bare minimum that you need. So yeah, I end up doing it this way, tweaking the logic slightly because I couldn't find a good way to easily do it. And I should have done RGBA, looking at his code. On the other hand, it does give you some unpredictable colors. Some of the color choices that were generated were quite nice, some of them not so much, and because they're pretty random. It's hard to determine.
It's gonna be green more often than not, if I'm understanding that correctly. Oh, okay, green.
Yeah, I am changing up the logic here. This takes me a little bit to fine tune it. It's still not perfect. Obviously, if I'd gone back, I would have done his RGBA thing. But I ended up sticking with this just because it was much easier to do. What is he doing right now? I think he's randomizing the colors now. Yeah. And here I'm also increasing the size of the grid and the boxes so that it's much bigger and it's much more obvious. So yeah, RGBA would have worked and looked a lot better. And there was a siren going by my place. Nice. I haven't made a YouTube video in a while, so if everything's out of whack, that's why. I just find it interesting that the text is selected when he clicks on it.
How is red team gonna handle the present variation if we're doing it this way?
Yeah, you can see. Yeah, I'm doing it by border. So, and this ended up being a little weird because the colors would actually combine. You can see I've got like a brown here and like a purple here. Totally unintentional. I don't know if it works. I think I add a little bit of margin between them in a little bit, just to cut down on that.
Do the present variation that you can't use an image of a present.
Yeah. You see, I had him muted as well, so I couldn't hear. Maybe I should have gone with different present images, but I didn't really have time for that, so I stuck with it, and I ended up getting the mark, so.
Luckily, we don't... Well, as long as it works on Firefox, you're good, because that's how I present it. That's how I'm going to be looking at it.
Yeah, it's also advantageous. I'm using Firefox as well. He's using Firefox, which means that they're going to show up pretty much the same in each instance. And I don't end up using CSS filters. That would have been a good idea, but I'm not super familiar with them, so I just decided to go with this. Here you can see he's doing the logical thing, just generating 3 numbers, which is what I should have done, or just generating up to 3. But I screwed up there. Yeah. If I wasn't so set on having images, I would have done just pure background colors, but yeah, you can see that's much nicer just in terms of UI. And you see we've still got 5 minutes left. I'm currently requesting the 3 colors as well, I think. Yeah, I've just requested it, so he gives it to me. I think I guess the borders just work fine. It's not perfect. I would have liked to do like the whole color, or the whole box rather. You can see I'm working on the bonus objective, even though it's not unlocked. It should be, I assume it would be easy enough to go back and just change it. So you can see I'm setting up the pick so that we can limit it to 3 tries. I accidentally do 4 here. That's 4, not that. I do 4 here because of reasons. And then I change it to 3 afterwards. And then I'm setting up logic here for if pick is equal to 3. And this ended up causing another bug where if you select the diamond on the 3rd try, then it would show both. I can't do numbers today. It'll show both banners, which ended up, it didn't end up costing me anything, but it was a bit of an annoying bug. You can see I'm setting up the lost banner as well. It looks like he's doing the same thing, but in his own way. So if chances is equal to 3, yeah, that's what I should have done. So I should have had if pick is equal to if pick is equal to, I guess, equal to 4, then I should have checked that first before I went through. So yeah, I do add the margins so the borders are much more pronounced. I think he does accept this.
Should I? I'll give it to.
Yeah, he's very hesitant about it, and I can see why.
But red.
I can't hear him. He keeps addressing me, but I can't hear him. So yeah, and here I've already implemented the logic. It was fairly easy logic, but here, yeah, you've got 3 chances. After that, that's it. And I completed it. 6, and then I think I just go through and do some cleanup. I believe blue does request the bonus objective in a little bit as well. You might skip ahead a little bit. Yeah, he does have a couple bugs. Let's just skip ahead a little bit.
We are going to be voting based off of design
Yeah.
UX too, so they still have things.
So I'm just cleaning things up. We've got 30 seconds, so so let's recap real quick. So we're neck and neck, both winning, or both the same amount of points. Functionally, they're very the same. He's got one bug that I don't, and I've got one bug that he doesn't. So it sort of balances out. Those bugs, one of those bugs are pointed out. Let me just speed through here a little bit more. So they're reviewing the UI, voting on that. Let's just jump ahead. We're just going to jump ahead a little bit to... So yeah, so we ended up tying 7-7. So it comes down to who has the overall best one. No bars or anything. And we can skip ahead and we can see I managed to get it, but like, how much? So just to recap that real quick. I had a lot of fun doing this. And I highly recommend that if you have the time on Saturday morning, I can't remember, when is the next Saturday morning? In a week, or 2 weeks, so the 15th, I think. I highly recommend you come by. Everything will be linked down below. Always looking for competitors. They always are. And I'll link to like all the code and stuff if you want to take a look. They archive it on their website. So maybe you guys enjoyed this, maybe not. I don't know. I thought I'd give it a try. So I will see you guys whenever. I'm sometimes streaming, so be sure to follow me on Twitch as well. See you guys later.